I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. It all started about 2 weeks before our wedding. Everything had felt perfect until I stumbled across her phone, not just a casual glance either. I was looking for a picture of the venue, some last-minute details we'd been texting about, and I saw the messages. They weren't just innocent, friendly exchanges. No, they were dirtier than I could have imagined. I remember the tight squeeze of my stomach sinking like I'd swallowed a stone. My palms went cold and sweaty as I scrolled through the screen. There were messages from her, explicit, suggestive, and downright disgusting, between her and my best man. I froze, my eyes fixed on the words I'd never wanted to see. Words about planning secret meetings, about how much they couldn't wait, and how perfect it all was. I saw her name over and over, and then his. The guy I trusted more than anyone. And right then I knew my world was crumbling. I didn't read it all immediately. My mind refused to believe what I was seeing. Instead, I stared at the screen, feeling a rush of heat rise in my chest. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. My breathing hitched like my chest couldn't quite get enough air. I remember thinking, this can't be real, not her, not him, not now. But the evidence was right there in black and white. No way to deny it. I kept telling myself, maybe it was some weird joke, a misunderstanding. But the messages, they made that impossible. The worst part was the physical ache in my stomach, like a punch to the gut. It was a kind of betrayal I'd never prepared myself for. Her words, their words, they weren't just flirtatious. They were raw, hungry, desperate. It felt like someone had taken a knife and twisted it deep inside. I kept scrolling, trying to find some sign that maybe I'd misunderstood. But I didn't. The messages kept coming, revealing their plans, their secret smiles, their coded language. I could see her fingertips on the screen, typing those damn words. I could almost hear her voice, whispering things I never wanted to imagine her saying. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed with her phone in my hand. My mind spun as I took in the evidence. I felt my heartbeat pounding in my ears, deafening everything else. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I sat there in silence. How could she do this? How could she betray me with my best man? I didn't wake her up to confront her then. I didn't want her to see the hurt on my face yet. Instead, I locked the phone away in a drawer, my hands trembling. I wasn't sure what I was more afraid of, what I'd find out or what I'd do. But I knew one thing, I couldn't trust her anymore. Not after this. Not with my heart, not with my future. The trust we'd built was gone, shattered by her lies and secrets. I felt the coldness seep into my bones. The thought of her lying there, sleeping, blissfully unaware of what I'd discovered, made my blood boil. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what to do next. My mind kept circling around one certainty. I had to get revenge, but I needed a plan. Something clean, something sharp. I wanted her to feel everything I was feeling: betrayal, anger, heartbreak. But I also knew I had to be smart. That's what my father used to say, revenge is a dish best served cold. Her betrayal didn't just hurt, it rewired something inside me. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I couldn't trust anyone anymore. Not her, not my friends, not myself. I had to do something. Something that would make her regret ever crossing that line. I looked at the phone one last time before hiding it in my drawer. I promised myself I'd be careful. I'd find out everything I needed to, then I'd make her pay. The question was how, and I knew I couldn't let her get away with this without consequences. Now I just had to figure out the next move. The next morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a train. My stomach was in knots and my head was pounding. I couldn't get the image of her texting her favorite guy out of my head. That shitty feeling of betrayal was stuck like glue, and honestly, it made my skin crawl. I kept replaying her words in my head, the way she'd written things like, "Can't wait to see you tonight." And this is all so perfect. I knew I had to act, but I also knew I needed more evidence, something concrete that I could use to confront her without doubt. Sitting there in my quiet apartment, I decided I'd get into her phone again. I needed to see if there was anything else I'd missed, any other proof that would seal my decision. I waited until she left for work, then slipped into her purse where she'd left it on the kitchen table. Her bag was a mess of receipts, lipstick, and random stuff. I reached in, feeling my pulse quicken as I grabbed her phone. My fingers trembled as I unlocked it with the passcode I'd always guessed, her birthday. The screen lit up and I immediately went straight to her messages. I scrolled back through the conversation with the guy, what was his name again, and confirmed what I'd seen last night. But then I saw something new. A message from her sent just a few hours ago asking if he'd be free that night. My stomach clenched. I kept scrolling. Her conversations with him weren't just about secret meetups. They were filled with flirtatious emojis, inside jokes, and promises to make it special. I could feel my jaw tight. How long had this been going on? How many nights had she been sneaking around behind my back? I found a picture she'd sent him, one I'd never seen before. It was her lying on the couch in a silk camisole, her hair messy and a mischievous smile on her face. My hands clenched into fists. I had to get out before she came home. I couldn't blow my cover. As soon as she returned that evening, I was calm, at least on the surface. I greeted her with a cold smile, pretending everything was fine. But inside I was seething. I had enough now. I'd gathered everything I needed for my plan. That night I sat in my room, my laptop open in front of me. I decided that I'd give her a taste of her own medicine. I started compiling the evidence, screenshots, timestamps, everything I'd found. I needed her to see it all. I wanted her to realize that I knew she'd been lying, sneaking, cheating. I also started thinking about how to go about it. I wanted her to feel the same cold betrayal, but I didn't want it to turn into some messy, emotional explosion. I needed to be cold, calculated. I thought about sending her an anonymous email, something that make her panic. Or maybe I'd use her own phone to send her a message. A plan started to form. I'd create a fake email account, one that looked like it belonged to the guy. I'd send her a message teasing her about the evidence I'd found, something like, "I know what you did. You can't hide from me anymore." I'd make her sweat. I wanted her to feel the same helplessness I'd felt the night I found out. While I was working through the details, I kept thinking about her, about how I'd trusted her, how we'd shared everything. That trust was gone now, replaced by a cold, furious desire for revenge. I wanted her to know that I wasn't some fool who'd get hurt and walk away. No, I was going to make her regret every lie, every secret. My hands were steady now as I set everything up. I changed my email, made sure there was no way to trace it back to me. I drafted the message carefully, making it just vague enough to cause panic, but clear enough that she'd understand it was real. Before I sent it, I paused. I looked at her phone, still sitting on the table like a ticking time bomb. I knew I had to do it tonight. The moment of truth was coming. I could feel my stomach tightening again, but this time it was with a sense of purpose. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was determined. She had crossed a line and I was going to make her regret it. Soon. I pressed send, then sat back, watching her phone, waiting for her to check it. My mind was racing with what would happen next. I was ready for whatever came, knowing that from this moment nothing would be the same. I was already planning my next move. Whatever it took, I'd make her see the damage she'd done. That night I watched her from a distance, pretending to be just another piece of furniture, while my mind burned with anticipation. I kept checking my phone, waiting for her to see the message and for the inevitable reaction. When she finally did, I saw her freeze. Her eyes widened, then her face went pale. I could almost feel the cold sweat breaking out on her forehead, even from across the room. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she unlocked it. I saw her breathe out sharply, then her eyes darted around like she was looking for escape. I stayed calm, standing just out of her line of sight, but inside I was boiling. "Who's this?" she whispered, voice trembling as she stared at the screen. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Her voice cracked, betraying her nervousness. I didn't say a word. Instead, I took a step closer, letting her see the cold fire in my eyes. Her hand shook as she tried to delete the message, but I knew better. I'd set it up so she couldn't escape the truth. "You think you can hide from me?" I finally said, my voice low but firm. "That was you, wasn't it, with him?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she tried to act innocent. "It's not what it looks like," she mumbled, voice cracking. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I cut her off. "You lied, you cheated, you hid things from me, and don't even try to deny it. You're caught red-handed." She burst into tears, clutching her face, but I didn't feel sorry for her, not anymore. I felt my jaw tighten and my fists clench. This was the moment I'd been planning for. I told her I'd had enough, that I knew everything and I was done trusting her. I told her that I'd already thought through what to do next, that I'd make sure she paid for her betrayal. The look in her eyes, it was a mix of guilt, fear, and desperation, made my stomach turn with satisfaction. "I want my ring," I said coldly. "You're not the person I thought you were. I want you to leave tonight, pack your things, and get out of my life. And don't try to contact me again, ever." She nodded, sobbing quietly as she gathered her things. I helped her, my face stone cold and my heart pounding. Every step she took toward the door felt like a small victory. I watched her leave, feeling a strange sense of relief mixed with bitter anger. But even as she walked out, I knew this wasn't over. Not really. I'd set my plan into motion, and I was already thinking about what came next. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal just as I had. I wanted her to understand that she'd lost everything that mattered. The house felt colder without her there. Silence settled in, thick and heavy. I poured myself a drink, trying to steady my nerves, but I knew I couldn't let this moment pass without reflection. I sat down and stared at the empty space where she'd been. I realized I'd been a fool for trusting her. I'd let her into my life, into my heart, and she'd thrown it all away. But I also knew I'd take control back. I'd rebuild somehow, not with her, never again. As I looked at the door where she'd just left, I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of relief and anger. I'd done what I needed to do. Now the real work began. I had to figure out how to move on, how to rebuild the parts of myself that had been shattered. And deep inside, I knew I'd never forget the betrayal. Never. But I'd also never let her see me broken. That was my plan, my way of turning the tables, for now. The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. The house was unnaturally quiet without her, like a ghost town. Every time I walked past her empty side of the bed, a cold wave of emptiness hit me hard. I'd replay everything, her betrayal, the messages, that moment when she left, over and over like a bad song I couldn't unhear. I kept busy, of course. I threw myself into work, into friends, anything to keep from dwelling on the pain. But no matter how much I distracted myself, there was this gnawing emptiness inside, and a deep, gnarly anger that refused to fade. I'd been betrayed, yes, but more than that, I'd lost trust, not just in her, but in everyone. One evening, I found myself sitting in my living room, staring at the empty space where she'd once sat. My mind kept circling back to that feeling of betrayal, the sting of it sinking deeper with each passing day. And then a thought crossed my mind, something I knew I had to do, even if it was risky. I needed her to see that I wasn't just going to be passive about this. I had to let her feel the weight of what she'd lost, and that meant confronting her again, but this time with a clear plan in mind. It was time to escalate. I opened my laptop and fired up a new plan. I'd been thinking about it for a while, how to make her really understand what she'd thrown away. I'd gather everything I could, screenshots, her old messages, any evidence of her deceit. Then I'd send it all to her, not in anger but as a calculated message. I wanted her to see that I knew every detail, that I was one step ahead. I wasn't going to let her spin her web of lies anymore. I'd make sure she felt the sting of her own betrayal magnified. So I started digging through her social media accounts. I knew she'd be stupid enough to have shared some of her secrets online, photos, comments, little hints. I had a sinking feeling she'd been careless, and that was my advantage. I downloaded everything I could find. As I sifted through her posts and messages, I felt a bitter satisfaction. She'd been sloppy, leaving clues that I could use. Then I decided to make a copy of her entire phone, just in case she got suspicious or tried to cover her tracks. I wanted to be prepared for whatever she might do next. I also drafted a message, something cold, direct, and intimidating. I wanted her to understand I knew everything, that I was watching. The next morning, I sent her a message from the anonymous email I'd created. I didn't want her to connect it to me directly, but I made sure it was clear and threatening enough to get her attention. I wrote, "You thought you could cheat and get away with it. Think again." Then I attached some screenshots of her messages, her face, her stupid little flirtations. I waited. It was nerve-wracking, but I knew I had to be patient. I watched her reactions carefully. She responded differently than I'd expected. She didn't panic immediately. Instead, she messaged me back, saying she didn't know what I was talking about and to leave her alone. That was a mistake. I knew she was trying to play innocent, but I didn't buy it. My plan was working. The next step was to escalate. I'd keep her on edge, make her feel like I was always watching, always one step ahead. Her attempts to deny it only fueled my determination. I started calling her bluff, sending more evidence, more threats, always keeping the tone cold and calculated. I wanted her to realize she'd crossed a line and now I was coming for her. Every message I sent was a small jab, a reminder that I wasn't going anywhere. I was building a case, a mountain of proof that would make her realize she'd lost control. Meanwhile, I stayed silent in person. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down. But inside I was stewing. I felt the familiar, sharp heat of revenge, something I'd never quite experienced before. This was about sending a message, about showing her she couldn't lie her way out of this. And beyond all that, I knew I was doing something necessary. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just about punishment. It's about reclaiming your dignity, your power. That's what I was after now. I wanted her to realize she'd been caught and that her lies had consequences. Later that night, I sat alone, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. I'd taken control of the situation, and I knew I had a few more tricks up my sleeve. For the first time in days, I slept better, not because I was happy, but because I was in charge now. I didn't know where this was going to end, but I knew it was only the beginning. The game was on, and I was playing to win. A few days passed, and I could tell she was starting to crack. Her calls and messages became more desperate, more frantic. She'd send brief, shaky texts, trying to deny everything, but the tone was different now. I could feel her panic creeping in like smoke on my skin. Every time she texted, I responded sparingly, letting her stew in her doubt. I kept up the pressure. I sent her screenshots of her own messages, proof that I knew she'd been lying all along. I even went as far as to create a fake account, one that mimicked her lover's. I sent her a message from that account just to make her second-guess her sanity. I wanted her to feel completely trapped, like she'd painted herself into a corner. One night, I arranged to meet her outside her apartment. I wanted her to see me face to face, see that I was serious. I wanted her to realize just how much I had her completely under my control now. I parked a little down the street, watching her come out, her face pale and eyes darting around nervously. When she saw me, her breath hitched. She paused, hesitant, and I saw her try to compose herself. But I wasn't interested in her excuses or her tears anymore. I just looked her over, cold and unyielding. "So you're finally ready to talk," I said, voice steady but cold. "Or is this just the beginning of your excuses?" She looked at me, her lips trembling. "You don't understand. I didn't mean for it to come out like this." "Didn't mean for it to come out," I repeated, my voice rising just enough. "You think that makes it okay? You cheated on me with my best man and you expect me to just brush it off." Her eyes welled with tears. "I was stupid. I was drunk. I didn't think it would go this far." "Stupid is not the word I'd use," I said. "You lied, you snuck around, and now you want to play the victim." I stepped closer. "You think I don't have enough evidence to bury you? Think again. I've got every message, every secret you tried to hide." She broke down completely then, sobbing loud enough that people on the street looked over. I didn't care. I just wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done. "You're the one who lost everything," I said, voice low and fierce. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave tonight and I'm going to change the locks. You won't contact me and I want the ring back." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it. No more excuses," I cut her off sharply. "You made your choices. Now you live with them." That was the last time I saw her. She gathered her things and left, her shoulders slumped and her face drained of color. I watched her walk away, feeling a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what I'd lost, my dignity, my trust in myself. I went inside, closed the door, and sat down in silence. The house felt colder than ever, but I also felt a strange sense of closure. I'd taken control. I'd shown her she couldn't manipulate me anymore. In that moment, I realized something that stuck with me. Betrayal cuts deep, but reclaiming your strength is what truly matters. That night, I did just that. I made my decision. The house was empty, but my mind was clear. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not anymore. And from that day forward, I promised myself I'd never let anyone betray me like that again. Because trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired, but strength, That's something you rebuild, and I was ready to do just that. The days after she left, I didn't do much talking. I just stayed in my space, letting the silence settle over everything. It was strange, quiet, yet oddly peaceful. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally in control of my own life again. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it didn't consume me anymore. Instead, it motivated me to rebuild something stronger. I started cleaning out her stuff, throwing away everything that reminded me of her, piece by piece. Her clothes, her keepsakes, even the little notes she'd left around. It was like ripping out a tumor I'd been unknowingly carrying. In the end, I handed her keys back, sealed the chapter, and told her to never come back. Standing at the door that night, I handed over the last of her belongings and watched her stumble into the night. Her face was streaked with tears and her shoulders sagged. I didn't say much, just looked her in the eyes once more and let her feel the weight of her choices. "It's over," I said quietly. "Goodbye." The moment I closed the door behind her, a strange sense of relief flooded through me. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my peace of mind. I knew I'd been hurt badly, but I also knew I could survive this. I'd rebuild better and stronger. In the days that followed, I took time to reflect. I realized how much I'd trusted, how blindly I'd believed in the idea of forever. But that trust had been shattered, and I had no choice but to learn from it. I remembered my father's words: "Revenge is a dish best served cold, but true strength is knowing when to walk away." I started going out more, reconnecting with friends and rediscovering what made me happy. I didn't need her to define me, and I refused to let her betrayal rob me of my future. I learned to trust myself again, to listen to that quiet voice telling me I was better off without her. Looking back, I realized that the revenge wasn't just about making her feel pain. It was about taking back my power, about showing myself I could survive, that I could stand tall even after being torn apart. I don't regret any of it. Every step I took, every move I made, it was necessary. Sometimes I think about what could have been, and honestly, it's a bitter pill. But I also think about the person I am now. Stronger, more cautious, sure, but also more aware of my worth. No one deserves to be betrayed like that, not me, not anyone. So I'll leave you with this: trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep. But in the end, reclaiming your strength and walking away is the most powerful revenge you can give. It's about taking control of your life, rebuilding from the ruins, and never letting anyone hold you hostage again. I closed that chapter years ago, but I carry the lessons with me. For anyone out there feeling betrayed and lost, know that you're not alone. You have the power to heal, to fight back, and to get your life back. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away and never looking back.